Hi there, I'm Sam Wong from FundableStartups.com. I'm a startup CEO coach, author, and the instructor for a library of startup training classes. We're going to do a visual explanation of fully diluted shares and startup ownership. This topic is surprisingly complex, as you'll soon see. To determine your ownership stake in the startup, simply divide the number of shares you hold by the total number of shares. For example, if you hold 30 shares and there are 120 total shares, your ownership stake is 25%. This is simple grade school math. Easy peasy, right? Well, determining how many shares are in the startup is actually not trivial. We'll walk through this visually using a Venn diagram. We start with the total number of authorized shares in the company. This is the maximum number of shares the company can issue and is spelled out in the Articles of Incorporation. A typical number for well-formed early and mid-stage startups is somewhere between 10 million and 20 million. Personally, I prefer to start with 20 million. Next, there are issued or outstanding shares. This is the total number of existing shares or rights to existing shares that are held by an owner. There can also be shares of stock that are not yet issued and therefore not yet held by any owner. We'll explain in a moment. Issued shares include preferred stock, which is usually purchased by investors in a preferred stock sale, and common stock, which is usually held by founders and advisors. Startup companies will also have a stock option pool. Stock allocated to this pool are granted as stock options to the employees. Stock options give the recipient, in this case Bella, the right to buy stock at a specified price. Once the options have been formally granted to Bella, the options are considered issued. The options in the pool that have not yet been granted to anyone are unissued or unallocated. Stock options typically have a 4-year vesting schedule. We cover stock vesting schedules in another YouTube video, so we won't get into the details here. At any given point in time, there will be some portion of the options granted that have vested, which of course means some options will not have vested. Do note that smart founders will have a repurchase clause in their common stock purchase agreements that mimics a vesting schedule. This is important to avoid a situation where a founder receives stock but leaves the company after just 1 month. Without repurchase rights, the remaining founders can't recover any portion of the departing founder's stock. The founder that leaves keeps all his stock and gets a free ride off the hard work of the remaining founders. These repurchase rights lapse over time. So as the founder continues to work for the startup, more and more of the founder's stock is no longer subject to repurchase, just like a vesting schedule. The union of the issued shares and the shares in the stock option pool are the shares that have been created. If there are shares that have been created, that also suggests there are shares that have not yet been created, but might have to be in the future. An example would be investors who hold convertible instruments such as a SAFE or a convertible note. We cover convertible instruments in another YouTube video. When a qualified financing round closes, the company would be obligated to issue certain number of shares of stock based on the terms of the convertible instrument. A party may also hold a warrant, which is the right to purchase stock at some point in the future. If the party exercises their warrant rights, the company would issue or create new shares of stock to fulfill the warrant obligations. The union of the two green rectangles, created and not yet created shares, is the number of fully diluted shares. The fully diluted shares is the total number of shares that would exist if all parties exercised their stock rights or fulfilled their stock obligations. The fully diluted shares is a key concept because it is the denominator in the ownership stake on the previous slide. I know this slide looks like the Easter Bunny got into a fight with a geometry teacher, but determining the all-important number of fully diluted shares is non-trivial. So, if we go back to the first slide that we covered, the fully diluted shares is used for the denominator in the fraction. So to summarize, the authorized shares are the total number of shares the corporation is able to have. Then you have the fully diluted shares, which represents all the shares that have been created or could be created from all outstanding contractual obligations. The created shares include the preferred stock, the common stock, and the stock options that have been granted. Together, these three represent all of the issued stock. Remember that the common stock and the stock options are usually subject to a vesting schedule or repurchase rights. Finally, there are non-issued existing shares, which are basically ungranted stock options from the stock option pool. Once you understand this Venn diagram, you'll understand startup stock probably better than 90% of all startup entrepreneurs. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, we'd greatly appreciate it if you would do us the favor of liking this video, subscribing to our channel, and clicking the bell so you'll be notified when we post new content. You can find more startup resources and training on our website, fundablestartups.com.